All right, as we start diving into animation principles, I want to go over the line of action. Line of action is going to be really important when we start looking at posing characters and looking at motion. And this is something that a lot of students struggle with in my university courses. It's just one thing that really it can be difficult to understand and to train your eye to kind of take a look at the overall posture of the pose. So if you take a look at the SpongeBob pictures on the left, you can see that this imaginary line runs through the character's body, and then in their body parts as well. As Squidward's like pointing with his finger, you can see that nice straight line that kind of draws your eye towards the posture that he's doing. It's a nice contrast as well with a straight and a curved shape, and those that contrast is something else we're going to discuss a little bit later. But when you start posing out your character, you're going to want to try to imagine this imaginary line that kind of runs through your character. This image in the middle here is a classic old book from that a lot of animators have studied from, and it kind of shows some examples of basically a similar type of motion that doesn't have strong lines of action versus something that does. And if you are pertaining this to even video game animation, making sure that your anticipation poses and your poses on as they're striking other characters, the line of action is really important, and it actually creates more power in the actual movements by creating really strong keyframe poses. So remembering how all of your limbs, arms and legs connect to the body, and how they flow through one of each other, and how the neck and the head connect with the torso, and how the torso connects to the legs. It's a really important element to remember as you start posing out characters and transitioning those poses into each other. Those lines of action are really important and critical to getting strong animation, and it's really what separates a really successful animation from something that could feel a little bit off or a little bit incorrect. Taking it a little bit further on this third slide, it's just another visual example of just how you can basically kind of accentuate your lines of action by adding squash and stretch. So in these similar little diagrams here with these lines, as the character is going forward in motion, stretching out the character's limbs, stretching out the arms, kind of accentuates the pose and gives a little bit more motion to the pose without it actually moving. So if you can imagine those strong poses being applied to an actual motion, it just makes the animation flow a lot more easily, and it's a more successful animation overall. And then, of course, if you're going up and down, applying that squash and stretch really helps accentuate some of these cartoonier characters, which doesn't really apply to like motion capture so much or more realistic characters, but understanding compression and extension and that contrast in the spine to create these strong lines of action really does apply to all types of animation and game animation even today. Since we'll be using a lot of video reference and live action in some of our animations that we'll be creating in this course, I also wanted to show that the lines of action do apply to realistic photos and images and video that you might be working with as you create your animations. If you take a look at the imaginary lines that flow through the spine of the body, whether it's a posture or a photograph or even a still frame from video footage, taking a look at straights and curves in the arms and the legs and how that line of action flows through the body really helps create a nice visual representation of the human body. And if they're interacting with each other, as I was saying before in the previous slide, when you're creating an attack animation, or if somebody is receiving a blow or a hit from maybe your playable controller of the player, that's basically affecting an NPC, non-playable character. Understanding the contrast in the lines of action in the body can really help accentuate and make some of these attacks and motions feel a lot more connected and visually more appealing, and create a lot more power and force by creating really strong poses for all of your postures and movements.